James Mitchell stood perfectly still in front of Buckingham Palace, just like he had done every day for the past 6 years. His red uniform was bright and clean, and his tall black hat sat perfectly on his head. He was a royal guard, and he took his job very seriously. James grew up in a small town called Yorkshire with his father Tom. Tom was a kind man who worked hard every day. He taught James that if you want people to respect you, you have to work hard and always do the right thing. James remembered these lessons every single day when he put on his uniform. The sun was shining brightly on this Tuesday afternoon. Many tourists had come to see the palace and take pictures. James could hear children laughing and parents talking excitedly about the guards. Most people were very nice. They would smile and wave, and James felt proud to be part of something that made people happy. But today was different. A man named Robert Clark was visiting London from another country. He was tall and loud, and he seemed angry about something. At first, he just walked round with the other tourists. But then he started looking at James in a mean way. James kept looking straight ahead, like he was trained to do. Royal guards are supposed to stand very still and not talk to people. It is an old tradition that goes back hundreds of years. James had practiced this for many months before he became a real guard. He was very good at staying still, even when people tried to make him laugh or move. But Robert started saying terrible things. He made comments about the color of James's skin and said hurtful words about where James's family came from. James felt his heart start to beat faster, but he kept looking straight ahead. He told himself to stay calm and remember his training. Other tourists started to notice what Robert was doing. Some of them looked uncomfortable and moved away. A mother pulled her small child closer to her. An elderly man shook his head sadly. Everyone could see that Robert was being mean. But no one knew what to do. Then Robert did something that changed everything. He walked right up to James and pushed him hard with both hands. James stumbled backward but kept his balance. Robert laughed and said words that were so cruel and hurtful that James felt like someone had hit him in the chest. For 6 years, James had never broken his training. He had stood still through rain and snow, through crowds of people, through loud noises and distractions. But in that moment, something deep inside him said enough. James looked directly at Robert. His voice was strong but polite when he spoke. "Sir, I ask you to step back and show respect." The entire courtyard became completely quiet. People stopped talking. Children stopped playing. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. No one had ever heard a royal guard speak while on duty. Robert's face showed complete shock. His mouth opened wide, and he took a step backward. He had expected James to stay silent no matter what he did. He never thought the guard would actually speak to him. James felt his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. He knew he had just broken one of the most important rules of being a royal guard. He might lose his job. He might get in serious trouble. But he also felt something else. He felt strong and proud that he had stood up for himself. In the crowd, a young girl named Emma was visiting the palace with her parents. She was 8 years old and had been very excited to see the famous guards. Emma had read books about the guards who never moved or talked, but now she had seen something she never expected. Emma tugged on her mother's dress. "Mummy, why did the guard talk?" she whispered. Her mother looked down at Emma with gentle eyes. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people have to speak up when someone is being very mean to them." Emma nodded seriously. Even though she was young, she understood that this was a very important moment. She had learned something new about being brave and Standing up for yourself. James continued to look at Robert, waiting to see what would happen next. Other tourists began to move closer, some taking pictures and videos with their phones. Security guards who worked at the palace started walking toward them. Robert realized that everyone was now looking at him. He saw the disapproval in their faces. He heard people whispering about what he had done. For the first time that day, he seemed to understand that he had done something very wrong. The warm afternoon sun continued to shine down on the palace courtyard, but everything had changed. James had found his voice, and he had used it to defend his dignity. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew he had done the right thing. James sat on his old couch in his small apartment, staring at his phone screen. He could not believe what he was seeing. Videos of what happened at the palace were everywhere. People were sharing them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The videos showed Robert pushing him and saying mean things, and then showed James speaking up for himself. His phone kept buzzing with notifications. Some people were writing nice comments, saying James was brave and did the right thing. They said it was good that he stood up for himself, but other people were angry. They said royal guards should never speak while on duty, no matter what happens. They said he had broken hundreds of years of tradition. James felt his stomach twist into knots. He had never wanted to be famous. He just wanted to do his job and serve his country. Now millions of people around the world were talking about him, and he did not know if that was good or bad. His phone rang, and he saw it was his father Tom calling from Yorkshire. Tom's voice was warm and gentle when James answered. "Son, I saw the news," Tom said. "You did what any good man would do. You stood up for yourself with dignity and respect." James felt tears come to his eyes. "Dad, I might lose my job. I broke the rules." "James, your mother taught you to be kind, but she also taught you to be strong. She would be so proud of how you handled yourself today. You were polite and respectful, even when that man was being cruel to you." James's mother had died 3 years ago after a long illness. She had been a nurse who always helped people, and she had taught James to treat everyone with kindness. But she had also taught him that sometimes you have to stand up for what is right, even when it is hard. After talking to his father, James's phone rang again. This time it was his sister Lucy, who lived in Manchester, where she worked as a teacher. "James, I am so proud of you," Lucy said excitedly. "All my students are talking about what you did. You have started something really important. People are discussing respect and dignity because of your courage. But Lucy, what if I lose my job?" James asked sadly. "Then you will find another job," Lucy replied. "But you will always know that you stood up for yourself and for all the other people who face the same kind of treatment. That is worth more than any job." James felt a little better after talking to his family, but he was still very worried. Being a royal guard was not just his job, it was his dream. He had worked so hard to earn this position. He had trained for months, learning to stand perfectly still, learning about the history and traditions of the guards, learning to be the best soldier he could be. The next morning, James had to go to work even though he felt scared. His commanding officer, Colonel William Davies, was a good man who had always treated James fairly. Colonel Davies had served in the army for 20 years before becoming the leader of the Royal Guards. He was strict but kind, and James respected him very much. But when James arrived at work, he could see that Colonel Davies looked worried. There were many phone calls from important people who wanted to know what would happen to James. Some people wanted him to be punished severely. Others wanted him to be given a medal for his bravery. That evening, James decided to take a walk through his neighborhood to clear his head. He lived in a quiet part of London, where he knew many of his neighbors. As he walked down the street, he saw Mrs. Rose, an elderly woman who lived in the apartment next to his. Mrs. Rose was 85 years old and had lived in London her whole life. She had seen many changes in the city over the years. She was always kind to James, and sometimes she would bake him cookies or invite him for tea on his days off. "Young man," Mrs. Rose called out to him, "I saw you on the television today." James felt embarrassed. He did not know what to say, but Mrs. Rose smiled at him warmly. "You showed that Guard uniforms are worn by real people with real feelings. That takes real courage. I have lived a long time, and I have seen many brave things, but what you did today was special." Her words made James feel better. Mrs. Rose continued, "People sometimes forget that guards are human beings with families and feelings." You reminded everyone of that truth as James walked home. He thought about what Mrs. Rose had said. Maybe he had done something good after all. Maybe speaking up for himself had helped other people too. 2 days after the incident, James received a phone call that made his stomach feel sick. He had to go to a special meeting with important officials who wanted to ask him questions about what happened. James put on his best clothes and walked to the big government building in central London. The room was full of serious-looking people in dark suits. James sat at a long table and felt very small, but the woman leading the meeting, Detective Inspector Helen Knight, had kind eyes and spoke to him gently. "James, we need you to tell us exactly what happened that day," she said. "Take your time and tell us everything you remember." James took a deep breath and began to speak. He told them about Robert Clark pushing him and saying terrible things, about his skin color and his family. He explained how he had tried to stay quiet and follow his training, but finally felt he had to speak up for himself. "I did not want to break the rules," James said honestly, "but I felt like I had to defend myself. I tried to be polite and respectful, even when I spoke." Detective Inspector Wright nodded as she listened. She had already watched the security camera videos from the palace many times. She had also talked to dozens of people who were there that day. "James, the evidence shows that you showed remarkable control," she told him. "You were pushed and insulted many times, but you only spoke once, and you were polite when you did it. Over the next few days, something amazing happened." James's fellow guards started coming forward to support him. Peter Williams, who came from Wales, was one of James's closest friends at work. He had worked with James for 4 years. "James is the kindest person I know," Peter told the investigators. "When I was going through a difficult time with my family, James would always check on me. He would bring me tea and listen to my problems. He never asks for help himself, but he is always helping others." Mark Campbell, who came from Scotland, also spoke up for James. "Last year, when I was sick with pneumonia, James came to visit me every day after work. He brought me soup and made sure I was taking my medicine. He is like a brother to all of us." The other guards told many stories about James's kindness and dedication. They said he was always the first one to arrive at work, and the last one to leave. They said he helped train new guards and was always patient with them. They said he had never caused any trouble in 6 years of service. But the most surprising thing was that tourists who had been there that day started contacting the palace. They wanted to tell their side of the story and support James. Emma, the 8-year-old girl who had watched everything happen, asked her parents to write a letter. Her father, David Thompson wrote, "My daughter and I witnessed the entire incident. The guard was respectful even when defending himself. He taught my daughter that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter what job they have." Emma's mother, Sarah, added her own note, "My daughter has been talking about this event every day. She says the guard was brave and kind. She wants to write him a letter to say thank you for teaching her about standing up for what is right." As the days went by, more and more letters arrived at the palace. They came from all over the world. A teacher from Canada wrote about how she had shown the video to her students to teach them about Ray. Specht, a retired police officer from Australia, wrote about how James had handled the situation better than many trained officers would have. James could not believe how many people were supporting him. He had thought that everyone would be angry with him for breaking the rules. Instead, people were saying he was brave and had done the right thing. One afternoon, an elderly man named George Patterson came to visit James at his apartment. George was 78 years old and had served in the British Army for 20 years. He had fought in several wars and had many medals for his service. "Son, I heard about what happened to you," George said as he sat down in James's small living room. "I wanted to come and tell you something important." George looked at James seriously. "I have been a soldier for most of my life. I have seen many brave things and many cowardly things. What you did took real courage. You honored the uniform by showing that the person wearing it matters too." James felt tears in his eyes. "But I broke the rules, sir. I spoke when I was supposed to stay silent." George shook his head. "Sometimes, son, there are rules that are more important than the rules we write down. The rule that says every person deserves respect is more important than any rule about staying quiet." After 2 weeks of investigation, James made a decision. That scared him but felt right. He decided to speak to the newspapers and television reporters about what had happened. Detective Inspector Wright had finished her investigation and said James could talk publicly if he wanted to. James put on his best suit and walked to a big hotel in London where many reporters were waiting. He had never spoken to reporters before, and his hands were shaking as he sat down at a table with microphones in front of him. The room was full of people with cameras and notebooks. James looked out at all the faces staring at him and took a deep breath. He thought about his mother and father, and about all the people who had written letters to support him. "I want to tell you why I spoke that day," James began. His voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger as he continued. "I love serving my country. I love being a royal guard. I have always believed that respect goes both ways." James paused and looked round the room. Everyone was listening carefully to every word he said. "When someone tries to hurt you because of who you are, staying silent does not make you stronger," he continued. "It makes the problem worse. That man pushed me and said terrible things about my race. I could not stay quiet anymore." James talked about his mother, who had died 3 years ago. "My mother was a nurse. She taught me to be kind to everyone, but she also taught me to stand up for myself. She always said that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." He talked about his father Tom, who had called him every day since the incident to make sure he was okay. "My father taught me that hard work and honesty are the most important things in life. He told me that speaking up for myself was the right thing to do." James also talked about his fellow guards, who had become like brothers to him. "Peter and Mark and all the other guards have supported me through this difficult time. They have shown me what true friendship means. We may wear the same uniform, but we're all different people with different backgrounds and different stories." When James finished speaking, the reporters asked him many questions. He answered each one honestly and thoughtfully. He talked about the importance of treating everyone with dignity, no matter what job they have or where they come from. The next day, James's interview was on television and in newspapers all over the world. The response was incredible. People from everywhere started writing letters and emails to support him. Veterans organizations wrote to say they were proud of how James had handled himself. Community groups invited him to speak at their meetings. Ordinary people from all walks of life said they admired his courage and dignity. Within just 3 days, more than 100,000 people had signed a petition supporting James. The petition said he should be praised, not punished, for standing up for himself while still being respectful and professional. Something else surprising happened. Robert Clark, the tourist who had caused all the trouble, wrote a public letter of apology. He had returned to his home country and faced many problems there because of his behavior. I want to apologize to James Mitchell and to everyone who saw my terrible behavior. Robert wrote, I was wrong to push him and say those hurtful things. I have learned from this experience that my actions were completely unacceptable. I am getting help to become a better person. Robert also said he was taking classes to learn about different cultures and how to treat people with respect. He donated money to organizations that fight against racism and prejudice. A week later, Colonel Davies called James into his office. James felt nervous as he walked down the long hallway to the colonel's door. He still did not know if he would keep his job or not. Colonel Davies was sitting behind his big desk, but he was smiling when James walked in. Sit down, James, he said kindly. The review is complete. Colonel Davies continued. The committee has made their decision. Not only will you keep your position as a Royal Guard, but you are being officially commended for your years of excellent service and for how you handled this very difficult situation. James felt tears come to his eyes. He had been so afraid of losing the job he loved. Thank you, sir, he said quietly. James, you have shown that it is possible to stand up for yourself while still maintaining dignity and respect, Colonel Davies said. You have made all of us proud, and you have helped make important changes that will protect all the guards in the future. James walked out of the office feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He had found his voice and used it to make a difference. 6 months had passed since the difficult day when James had to speak up for himself. Now, he stood in his familiar spot outside Buckingham Palace, wearing the same red uniform and tall black hat that he had worn for 6 years. But many things had changed since that sunny afternoon. The Royal Guard had new rules now to protect guards from people who might try to hurt them with words or actions. There were security officers who watched more carefully, and guards were taught how to get help quickly if someone was being mean to them. All the guards had special training sessions where they learned how to support each other during difficult times. James had become famous around the world, but he tried to stay the same kind and hard-working person he had always been. He still arrived at work early every day. He still helped train new guards. He still took great pride in wearing his uniform and serving his country. Many visitors to the palace now knew who James was. Some would point at him and whisper to their friends. Others would smile and wave. James was always polite to everyone, just as he had been taught. One afternoon, James recognized a family walking toward the palace. It was Emma, the 8-year-old girl who had watched everything happen 6 months ago. She was with her parents, and they were visiting London again. During his break time, Emma walked up to James with her mother and father beside her. She looked up at him with serious eyes. "Hello, Mr. James," Emma said politely. "I wanted to thank you for what you did that day." James smiled down at the little girl. "Thank you, Emma. What did you want to thank me for? You taught me that everyone deserves respect, no matter what job they have or what they look like, Emma said carefully. I tell my friends at school about what you did. James felt his heart warm. You are very welcome, Emma. The most important thing to remember is to always treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. Emma nodded seriously and then smiled. I will remember that forever. Emma's parents thanked James too. Her father said, You have made a real difference in our daughter's life. She talks about respect and kindness all the time now. Later that week, James's father Tom came to visit from Yorkshire. He brought a big box of James's favorite homemade cookies that he had baked himself. Tom was so proud of his son and loved to visit him in London. Your mother would be so proud if she could see you now, Tom said as they sat together during James's lunch break. You have helped so many people learn about treating others with dignity. James and his father watched as tourists walked round the palace courtyard. Most of them were respectful and kind. Children waved at the guards, and parents explained to them about the history and traditions of the royal guard. James's sister Lucy had also done something special. She had started a program at her school in Manchester called Respect and Dignity for All. She taught her students about treating everyone fairly, no matter what they looked like or where they came from. Lucy used her brother's story to help children understand why kindness was so important. I am so proud of what you have accomplished, Lucy told James during one of their phone calls. You have inspired so many people to be better. As James returned to his post that afternoon, he felt a deep sense of peace in his heart. The past 6 months had been the most difficult time of his life, but they had also been the most meaningful. He had learned that standing up for himself had helped many other people find their own courage. Mrs. Rose, his elderly neighbor, still waved at him every morning when he left for work. She had become like a grandmother to him, and her words of encouragement had helped him through the hardest days. Colonel Davies had become more than just James's commanding officer. He had become a true friend who checked on James regularly and made sure he was doing well. The colonel often told James how proud he was of the way he had handled everything. Tourists from all over the world still came to visit Buckingham Palace. Every day, most of them were respectful and kind. They took pictures and learned about British history and traditions. James felt proud to be part of something that brought joy to so many people. Sometimes James thought about Robert Clark, the man who had caused all the trouble. Robert had continued to apologize and was working to become a better person. James had forgiven him and hoped he would learn to treat everyone with respect. James had learned that the most important battles in life are not fought with weapons or violence. They are fought with words, courage, and the simple act of demanding to be treated with dignity and respect. The end.